Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
This week we're going to do that one scene from Network.
Let's dive in! Alright everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Pulcher.
And if you like what you see/hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people find good media, Pulcher.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
All right.
Whether that be through iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify or YouTube
We got it all.
Got it all. We have all of it. And this is one of our reoccurring segments, that one scene from.
Yes.
This was your idea. You want to talk about this real quick?
Well, Sidney Lumet, I think, is a big part of it. He's an insanely good director. One of probably my all-time favorites. I would maybe put him up there, at least top 10.
Yeah.
This is a movie that probably doesn't get a lot of cred for what it did for the time. You know, this was made in 1976, but the messaging is pretty timeless. Let me just start there.
Yeah, no kidding. It just becomes more and more prescient each year.
It really is very interesting to reflect back on, because they're really, this is probably about halfway through the movie. I rewatched the whole thing just because it's been a long time since I'd watched it, so I watched the whole thing. So it's about halfway through the movie, and I forgot the context of him admitting that he was going to come back in a week and commit suicide on air.
Yep.
And I love that scene because it's no one's paying attention and doesn't realize what he just said, and that starts this whole snowball effect of, people reporting the news versus people having opinions on the news or the world or whatever it may be, right? Is his off-the-rail stream of consciousness what we want to do? Like, how does that deal with journalistic integrity? Mm-hmm. But also, hey, our ratings, we're making the most money we've ever had from this. People love this shit.
Yeah, because it's unpredictable. We don't know what he might do next.
We don't know what they're going to say.
Yep.
And you look now in the time and place where there's all of these networks, and they all have opinion shows of some babbling idiot, no matter what side you're on, like saying, going off on their opinion of whatever it is.
Right.
And you see how popular those are, and we're in a world of confirmation bias, and we're in a world of reconfirming, like, oh yeah, I'm with you, I'm not with you, like it just in a world of division, right?
Right.
At least in America, and I know all over the world as well. In my lifetime, there's never been such a divisive time. In my lifetime, at least that was relevant to me in my adulthood. And hearing this now, from Peter Finch, who this was I think he died shortly after this movie came out, and he was the first posthumous award winner outside of, I think, Heath Ledger.
Yep, that's the only other one
that was able to that won an Academy Award posthumous. Anyways, a lot going on in this scene. It's actually a pretty short scene, mm-hmm. But in the movie, at this point, just to give some context of the scene inside of the movie, like I said, it's an hour into it. His whereabouts are kind of lost. No one knows where he is that day, and he just leaves the house in his jammies and a trench coat and just walks through the rain.
Yep.
And that's what's happening before the scene, and he just walks into the building. They just let him in. He goes right on set and just starts talking, and Faye Dunaway, who's this like cutthroat programmer for the channel or the station or whatever it is, really sees this as an opportunity to make a show out of it. Yep. It's not the news, it's a show, right?
Well, and I think that there's this sense of like, what's he going to do next?
Sure.
And
that's what people are tuning in for.
Well, and it's so cynical because there are even these discussions of like, well, what if he does kill himself on television? And it's like, well, are we liable if he does? Like, there's this, the level of cynicism that this movie has is pretty staggering for its time. Mm-hmm. And, as to what you just said, like, still relevant in so many ways. Now, it is worth mentioning that 2 years before the movie Network was made, an anchor from Florida named Christine Chubbuck did commit suicide on live on television on her news broadcast, and actually said her final words were, in keeping with the tradition of KPXW or whatever her station was,
Yeah.
of making sure that the gore is gory and the blood is red and real. Next up, we're going to have an attempted suicide, and then she pulled out a gun and she shot herself right here. It wasn't an attempted suicide. She was taken to the hospital
Successful.
and then taken off life support. Literally, Peter Finch's line in this movie before Lumet changed it was, "I'm going to kill myself on TV just like that woman in Florida."
Oh.
And at the very last minute, I think Lumet was like, let's just dial it back a little bit.
Make it not that real.
But, I think that it did, between that, Bud Dwyer's suicide on television.
Sure. Yeah, that
and,
one haunts me.
Yeah, and I think that it's this conversation that at the time was like, what is the purpose of the media? And I think it's really interesting that in this movie...
This was really the first movie to ask that question, though, right?
I mean, as far as I'm aware.
yeah.
And I feel like that what it does, interestingly, is that he is calling out Peter Finch's character, Howard Beale, is calling out the media cycle for sensationalizing all this awful shit.
Yeah, he's like, oh, we're reporting there's 15 homicides, and like, that's supposed to be normal.
Yeah, but then you go, and the network is elevating his platform to say that.
Oh, the irony is thick.
The irony is thick, but it's also temporary. And this is really before the movie gets dark, right? I mean, in fact, those back and forth moments, boy, talk about fantastic acting without doing a whole lot. Faye Dunaway's face as it's cutting back to her from Peter Finch's
great here.
dialogue
Yeah.
is just incredible
Well,
to
and she's
watch.
like celebrating. She's
Yeah.
doing
Oh yeah.
cartwheels.
She's for lack of a better term, she's getting turned on.
Yeah.
She's not because she likes him, but because she's like, oh my god, this is going to get us such amazing ratings, right?
we hit the gold mine.
and I think
Yeah.
that's what she says. Like we hit
Yeah.
the jackpot.
Are they screaming in Atlanta? Or
Exactly.
What does she say?
Yeah. Well, and then as they're looking out their, sticking their heads out their windows and hearing all these people screaming that amazing, almost like horror movie level of thunder and lightning.
It's a great
And
scene.
It's an amazing
So effective.
sequence. Yeah.
And we'll get into that, but yeah, it's a confounding question, and that's really kind of what art's supposed to do, right? Is supposed to question authority, is supposed to question certain views that you have, or challenge those views to a degree.
Well, I mean, this thing's a black comedy, and
Yeah.
you just go, but it's
I
not
don't even know.
anymore.
I don't. Yeah, that's. I
It
don't
may
even.
have been in
I
'74
was gonna say I don't
whenever
even know
this
if it
came
is
out.
then.
like-
I don't. I didn't laugh a lot in this movie.
no, but I
it's
think
not
that
really.
it was
It's a
absurdist.
satire, right?
I think it
Or
was.
that's what it was supposed to be.
It was absurdist. It was an absurdist take that isn't that way now. Just like when we
But
reviewed.
if you showed this to a classroom of kids now that are in their 20s, like just in college,
Yeah.
and show this to them, they wouldn't think it's funny.
no.
They would think, yeah, that's all true. Like, that's...
Well, what if you did a double feature and you showed this and you showed Wag the Dog,
yeah.
right? And we talked about this when we reviewed it. If you showed it to a group of 20-year-olds, half of them would point at Wag the Dog and say, that's what my dad believes. He thinks all wars are just made up by a secret shadowy government and that all of it's just on TVs, in TV studios.
Yeah, I saw it on TV.
I saw it on TV. None of it's real. I think that there was a time when, the naivety and folly of our youth. There was a time when we
true.
thought that this was an absurdist concept, but
And when conspiracy theories were fun.
exactly when they weren't something that like people in real positions of power believed in.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that to that same point here, I mean, you talk about that predictive ending of this movie, which is, of course, not to spoil a movie that's older than I am, but Peter Finch or Howard Beale decides he doesn't want to kill himself, but his ratings are slipping, and so the
Well, he gets
network
his own show.
he gets his own show. He becomes like the biggest thing on the planet, but then his ratings start to drop. His ratings start dropping, and so instead, the network essentially decides to hire what is essentially this Symbionese Liberation Front. It's basically a fictional version of that real cult/gang, and they assassinate him. And that very last scene, his assassination is played over and over and over again on multiple channels in between Delta
Well, he
Airline,
becomes the news, right?
Yeah, Delta Airline commercials and "Hey Mikey, he likes it," cereal commercials. But all I could think about that end scene was the footage of 9/11, right? Just like the rapid fire footage over and over and over again of like the exact same event ad nauseum for weeks and months on end, and you're like, that's what a movie was able to do 30 years before, 30 some odd years before that happened. You're just like, whoa, okay, yeah, that's a little on the nose.
Oh yeah, I mean, he has a line here where he says, "Our worlds are getting smaller, and just let me watch my TV and leave me alone," and all this stuff. And you're like, post-pandemic shit. It's a little too,
yeah, right?
a little woo.
Yeah,
but
no doubt.
But he's like, "I'm a human being. God damn it!
Yeah,
my life has value."
Yep.
And he has this just amazing performance in this scene. And, and obviously the main chunk of this, what we're getting at is what he gets at is he wants you to stand up and say, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take this anymore."
Yeah.
Right? Which is like, oh my gosh, what a great line. Who doesn't want to scream that from their balcony?
And it's so funny because I thought a lot about that line and I was like, it's the perfect clarion call for uninformed outrage.
Totally.
Right? It doesn't have any, it's like, it's super catchy.
Sure.
Everybody can yell it. Nobody has any idea what it means.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything. But it's like, yeah, everybody
People think
can be.
they do. They want something to stand behind.
Right. And you're like, and if you have like a black person, a white person, a rich person, a poor person, a Native American person, if you have all these people and they're all saying that exact same phrase, they all mean completely different things when they say it.
Yep.
Right? And some people,
I don't think that intention has more relevance now than it did then.
Right.
Yeah.
But that same, but you think about what happened this last year where it's like people were equating the events of January 6th with the protests for Black Lives Matter, as if those two things were the same thing because they both featured people who were mad in it. Right? They're like, well, how come this one's okay and that one's not? They're all mad people, and you're like, yeah, you're mad as hell, and you're not going to stand for it anymore.
It's true.
But you both
different now.
You both mean completely different things when you say that, right? And they have
that's what
completely different levels of validity.
And seeing that scene with that building, who apparently only has one TV channel,
there was what, like 4 of them back then?
That's what I was gonna say. It's like in the 70s, you actually only had like 4.
You had 4.
Yeah.
And if the knob broke on your TV, then you had a pair of channel nose pliers.
Channel nose pliers.
Or
needle nose.
Needle nose. Well, needle nose pliers or channel lock pliers.
Yeah.
And you would drunk, and that's how you.
I love that he's wet in his jammies. It makes him seem that much crazier.
Oh yeah. It's really funny. Watching this again, I don't think I would have connected these two, but there's that really great season 1 Black Mirror episode where it's the weird dystopian future where you get points for riding on the bike.
Sure.
And the guy, I can't think of the actor's name now, who's the main guy in it, and he decides he doesn't want to be on the TV show anymore, and he breaks the piece of glass and holds it to his own throat, right? And then the twist at the end of that episode is he gets his own TV show being a guy that's holding the piece of glass to his own throat, but now he lives in this big mansion. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what they did to Howard Beale, right? They went from him being sopping wet and saying, I want you to get up and get mad, and he's like at the end of his rope, like losing his mind, and they turned that into his TV show. That's
interesting.
Where it's like, get up there and be crazy, right? And it's like, but he can't recapture that
shit.
Yeah, and he can't recapture it because he was literally in a moment of mental health crisis, right? And then they like doll him up and dress him up, and so of course the ratings go down. But
the fact that Diana is so raved about this mother load, hitting the mother load,
oh yeah,
is disturbing, but also very accurate.
Completely accurate.
And just like proof in the pudding, go on any cable news network and you will see some version of this.
Outrage sells. Well, I mean, it's the final line in the movie, right? Howard Beale, the first man to
Now everyone just has more channels.
Yeah, what does he say? He's like the first man to be killed because his ratings were slipping.
Yeah.
Or something, right? One last thing I wanted to mention, one last observation. Can you think of a movie before Network that has this ubiquitous scene of cutting between the anchor or actor or whoever up in the front to the control room to the person getting on the phone and saying, stay with him, get on the da-da-da, right? Where we're jumping back and forth. Like, I think this might be the movie that pioneered that look. Because now, I mean, it's a thing we know, right? Everything from Tootsie to Broadcast News to Wag the Dog to Anchorman has used it. But did it start here? I can't. It's such a classic scene.
I don't know. I'm sure there's something. I mean, TV had been around a lot at that point. I don't know if we'd seen the behind the scenes. I actually really
That's what I'm saying, though.
I actually really like that when he does stand up and starts
like,
getting
stay
mad
with
as
him,
hell.
stay with him.
You see the behind the scenes guys like ducking out of the way.
What do we
and
do?
everything.
Yeah, that's what I'm
and
saying.
there's a
like,
guy in front of the camera that's telling him like, hold on, hold
Yeah.
on, like don't go anymore. You've exceeded your limit of or whatever.
Yeah.
But, like that was fun to me. I loved seeing that.
Same here, but I just thought
it's a
like
production.
Yeah, and
he knows it.
I thought of that. One movie that really crackles with that kind of those kinds of moments, I think, would be Nightcrawler.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're in that control room,
Yep.
and they're just going back and forth, but it's like you're getting both sides of it. And again, very cynical, right? Like,
oh yeah,
more blood, show the blood. You got to stay with the blood, right? It's like that kind of vibe, and then you're seeing what's actually happening and what the TV audience sees.
That's a great comparison, actually.
But yeah, I just never like in seeing this, I was like, is there another movie that's like this old that showcases that? Maybe there is, but I couldn't think of one.
TV's been around 25 years at that point, maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. To some degree, but I don't know. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Live broadcasts are different as well.
Yeah, totally.
So maybe I'm not totally sure, but that's a good question. If you know, please comment.
Yeah.
Let us know. I just love how raw this scene is. I love how timeless it is.
Oh, yeah.
I love the message behind it, even if you don't agree with the message. Yeah, I love that he says, I'm not going to tell you to write your congressman because I wouldn't know what to say.
Yeah. Again,
it's
it's this neutered rage of just like being fed up, but that it doesn't. And of course, that's going to be the most popular thing, right? It's not going to be as popular if it's like, here's my platform, and everybody needs to educate themselves.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want you to educate yourselves. I want you to throw your TV out the window.
And I'll end on this, but William Holden's character, who had just been fired for putting him back on air,
Yep.
is at home watching with his family.
Yep.
And that's the building that we hear everyone shouting out of. But his realization of like, oh shit, this is actually like,
yeah, this is what I did.
This is working.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I've created a monster to a degree. You definitely did, because it is out of control.
And it never comes back, right? It never.
Fascinating scene, though.
Yeah.
Really fun to reflect on.
Really
and
makes you think.
I have a feeling this, just even scene review of this will be timeless. Just in even 15 years, people will be like, yep, still right. Still timeless.
Oh, God, I can't imagine
Probably
it.
even worse.
I was going to say, I can't imagine doing anything but getting worse. And on that note, everybody.
Please like and subscribe.
Deep Dive Film School, the only news you'll ever need. Just feed into our channel. That's it. That's all you need to do.
Hey, we got a sign now. It's professional.
It is professional. There is a sign.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Please like and subscribe.
Yes.
Like we said, next week we're going to do our Complicated Failures Festival and get into Cloud Atlas with our friend Fuzz.
Who cannot wait?
Excited to do it. We'll see you
right.
then.
Bye, you guys.